We are live.
Hello, greetings everyone, and welcome to another Educator Innovator Hangout on Air. Today is December 16th, 2015, and we are super excited to welcome a big group of colleagues who are fostering conversations about inquiry and its role in building schools as learning communities, or what we might call Schools 2.0. This is the second in a two-part series on this topic. So last week we focused on the ways that educators are thinking about inquiry and connected practice together and as colleagues building schools together. And this week we're going to take our conversation another step, looking specifically at some examples of this within a school and hearing from students working alongside their teachers in creating these environments together, also alongside community members, teachers, and other caring adults in their community. These conversations are inspired by the work that was recently published in a new book called Building 2.0, How to Create the Schools That We Need by Chris Lehmann and Zac Chase here. But this is also historical and as well as emerging work, as you'll see in this school here in Philadelphia. And is supported in many ways across the country via projects like Inquiry Schools, which Diana Laufenberg here directs. This series is also co-streamed today at ConnectedLearning.tv, and we send them a special thanks for their support in making this happen. And I'm your host, Christina Cantrill. I'm Associate Director at the National Writing Project, and I'm based here in Philadelphia. So just so we get a sense of who's here in our virtual room, I'll have everybody introduce themselves, and I'll start from my left and move over. So why don't you just say who you are, your title, what you do, and kind of what brings you here. So Diana, you are first.
My name is Diana Laufenberg. I am a former classroom teacher and now the Executive Director of Inquiry Schools, which is a nonprofit that does work in new school development, school transformation, and standalone professional development, largely around the ideas of inquiry and kind of modern schooling. And so that's the work I'm up to presently.
Thank you. And now I pass it to the crew over at SLA Beeber.
Hi. So my name is MaryBeth Hertz. I teach kids technology and art at the Science Leadership Academy at Beeber. I also serve as the technology coordinator for the school, and I'll let the students, and we also have another adult in the room, introduce themselves.
My name's Troy Taylor. I'm a junior at Science Leadership Academy at Beeber.
I am Brodie. I am also a junior at Science Leadership Academy at Beaver.
And I'm Marcus, and I'm the same as these two guys.
He's literally the same person.
Yep, the same person. Yep.
Big person.
And I'm Alex Gilliam. I am the founder and director of Public Workshop and co-founder of Tiny WPA. And through both organizations, we're really lucky to get to work with young adults like Brodie and Marcus and Troy, and put them at the forefront of designing and building improvements to their schools and communities, neighborhoods, etc.
Awesome, and you guys have done an excellent job of fitting into that screen there, so nicely done. Okay, Zac, you're up.
Hi, I'm Zac Chase. I'm coming from Washington, D.C., but I'm an instructional technology coordinator in the St. Vrain Valley School District in Colorado, on detail for 2 years at the U.S. Department of Education currently, and as Christina mentioned, the co-author of Building School 2.0. Also, former teacher at Science Leadership Academy Center City, and before that, down in Sarasota, Florida.
Awesome, yes, thank you. And I should say that just for context, SLA Beeber is a school it's in the Overbrook section of Philadelphia, right? Yeah. And there's another SLA that was the founding school that's in Center City, Philadelphia. I think I got that right? Okay. I thought maybe we could start with Diana just in this conversation, and we'll build up to some of the stuff you guys are going to share over there at Beeber. You know, keep the excitement going here. So Diana, I thought you were here on the webinar last week, and we talked about several things. We talked about the role of inquiry in building communities and schools. We talked about the way the systems of schools need to be considered to support inquiry and happening. And then we talked about ways educators work together and alongside their students to really move into these practices. And sometimes we talk about leaning into these practices, that it's a process of really getting comfortable with some new ways of doing things sometimes, and doing that together. And so in the book, School 2.0, there's a chapter 6, that's called Vision Must Live in Practice. And so if you can help us sort of get a sense of, like, this will help us get a sense of the book and sort of your experiences in these kind of schools. Like when schools are doing this right, when their vision is living in practice, what is the impact and what does that look like? And or, you know, as schools struggle with this, what does that look like and what's the impact?
So I've had the privilege of working in a number of different schools throughout the country. I taught in Wisconsin, Kansas, Arizona, and Pennsylvania as a full-time teacher, and saw the varying levels of what this manifests in terms of kind of the day-to-day practice. Many schools will have a mission and vision, and it will prominently be displayed on a website and or a wall. But when you actually start to talk to people about what it is that means, or where you can, you know, the phrase that we bandied about a lot in Philly is, you know, where can we see it? Where does it live and breathe on a daily basis? And I've worked with several schools on mission and vision work, and almost always they look with almost embarrassment upon their mission and vision, because when you say to them, where does this live? How can I see this? And they're like, I don't have much for you. You know, somebody wrote this, they're no longer here. I'm not sure what that means. You know, there just seems to be, you know, it's just words on a page. When it's going well, what it becomes is the foot on the ground, the pivot point, the plant moment for everybody in the system to say, this is our shared belief about why we're here and the work that we're doing, and that every single person that functions inside that community can speak to that powerfully because they see it and act within it on a daily basis. And the point that I'll make is that, you know, that sounds great, but, you know, what does that feel like? What does that mean? And it's the difference between working in a building with really well-meaning, lovely professionals that are all doing their job well in their classroom, and working as a team of people really centered around a mission and vision and all pulling in the same direction. The difference in those working spaces is monumental, and when you've had the opportunity to be somewhere that everybody pulls together in the same direction, and when they don't, it's palpable, the difference in the type of community that can be built and the work that can be done.
One of the pulls that I feel when I hear from you all over time is actually, MaryBeth, you introduced yourself as someone who teaches your students art and technology, and that's a piece from chapter 15 of this book, actually, that we teach kids before we teach subjects. Would anybody could really answer this? Maybe Diane, you could start, or, you know, anybody could really answer this, or MaryBeth, if you want to respond to that, just because that's how you introduced it. But that is something I notice in common between you all as you work.
I think MB should jump in.
I got to unmute myself. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
The laptop is placed, so I have to reach to get to it. So yeah, I mean, that's one thing that, you know, when I started working before I even started working at SLA, you know, I used to go to EduCon, and I used to visit the school and talk with teachers who work there, and it always made a big impact on me to hear teachers say that. I only ever heard it at SLA. It was like this this like secret language that they had, like I teach kids, you know, and it really stuck out. And I remember when I started, we went through our orientation when we started Beeber, and I remember, you know, we talked about that, and that like that's almost the purpose of it, is to make people step back for a minute and say, you know, think about why did they say it that way? Why do they say I don't teach English, but I teach students English, or I teach ninth graders English? And so it starts a conversation. And I think also, you know, to Diana's point about mission and vision, when we say that, it's like a reminder to ourselves of why we're here. You know, I'm not here for art. You know, I love art, it's great. I'm not here for technology, I'm here for kids. And so it kind of is that, you know, Diana said, well, where does that live? Well, it lives in the language that we use, and it lives in how we talk about what we do.
That's great. And yes, I've been to EduCon too, which is an annual event that SLA hosts here in Philadelphia. That's coming up, by the way, in January. So, and you do hear that. And actually in the book, Zach, maybe you could speak to the book a little bit, but in the book you talk about how you know, the awkwardness of it sometimes is actually like meant to sort of stop, you know, make us think about what are we doing as educators? What is the center of our work? So maybe you could give us some background and talk about the book in that context.
Sure. I mean, it's a humanist approach to education, which is, I should say, because Chris and I are kind of the first people to say this, we are under no impression that we're the first folks to put these ideas together. Right, that this work has been going on for a very, very long time, and that what we are trying to do is kind of put them together in a place that says, one, that fights against the idea of a silver bullet, right? It's not one lever that you pull that, oh, look, we've made schools more humanistic places, but that there is a collection of things that must be done, or that could be done, or that you might need in your setting, to make places better for the people who are in them. I love the awkwardness. I still do it, right? Like I'm not in the classroom right now, but when people ask, oh, what did you teach? I love it because there is an awkward pause and there's a slight look away when you say, I taught kids English in high school and middle school. But it also is about kind of putting the human in the center of the conversation. And saying, you know, we attend to all the needs of the people who are in our care, and that includes the adults. And I want to kind of maybe go back a piece to vision, living, and practice. Three examples here who are amazing. I mean, Alex, MaryBeth, and Diana are just exquisite learners in the work that they do, right? And so if we want our kids to be doing cool things, then there should probably be room for the adults to do cool things. And prior to this, right before we jumped online, right, the school district's internet went down, and I have no doubt that MaryBeth had like 3 possible options for how she was going to pull the kids into the conversation, and so it's just that kind of honoring the learning and the processes of all of the people in the building or the community that makes vision, live, and practice as well.
Awesome, that's great. I am wondering if you can give us a little sense of the book, Zach. One of the things that we heard from Adina Sullivan last week, and she's in California. Now I'm forgetting where in California. Diana, I'll have to remind me. San Marcos.
She's in San Marcos. Yeah.
Awesome. And you know, they're working on this too. So you know, and as you said, this is not only happening in Philadelphia. There's a long history of this work. You know, and we're also you know, a big thing I think you talk about in the book is this idea of School 2.0. Like we're trying to bring inquiry into modern schools and schools for today and schools for the world that the students live in and that we as adults live in too. So maybe you could just give a little background on this book and your intentions with the book and sort of where it comes from, so we have some sense of that.
I mean, so the fact that there are 95 theses in the book is not an accident, right? Clearly it is our allusion to Martin Luther nailing his doctrine to the church house door and saying, this is what we need And so when Chris and I were building the piece, there are always going to be 95 theses. They aren't the only 95 things that we think about education, but they are probably the 95 that hit to the top. And they also, we were hoping to honor those thinkers who have come before us, right? I mean, if you don't see the ideas of John Dewey and what he hoped for schools to be throughout the pages of this book, then we're not doing it right. But it's also a recognition of, listen, we've had a lot of time to perfect 1.0. And if you look across the country, we have a lot of schools who are doing a lot of things that are similar to what we've always done in public education. But we have a unique set of circumstances, right? The tools are there, the initiative is there, the will is there, and I would also say that in many cases the permission is there to try new things in public schools, and so just kind of saying, here's how we are building those things, right? It's a constant process, and the modern piece is also important, right? It's not building schools that we might need, but it's saying, what is it we need right now, right? When talking about SLA as a model, that doesn't fit, right? Because, and it doesn't fit to say that Beeber and Center City are the same school. They're the schools that those communities needed and want and are building together. And so in the same way that I wouldn't want every school across the country to be SLA. I grew up in a very small town in Illinois. SLA would not be the school that town needed. We're saying, here's some principles that if you ask some good questions, you're going to come up with your own unique answers. But if you've asked the right questions, you're probably headed in the right direction.
That's great. Thank you, Zach. I am wondering, we could talk about some pieces of the book a little bit more, but I'm wondering, I'd love to hear from the crew at Beeber about some of the work that you all have been doing and some of the ways you've been sort of inspiring each other as learners in your community, how you've been building community, how you've been co-creating community, and kind of how you've been inspiring the learning you've been doing together.
Yeah, so this is, I just told the students while we were muted, I said, I'm putting you guys on the spot. What's really great is that we have 3 juniors in the room. Our school is being, is in the process of being built as a community. So we only have 3 grades right now, and we'll have a 4th grade. They'll be the first graduating class. And so if anybody can speak to community, I know, if anybody can speak to, you know, the community building, the process like that we went through as a school, that we're still going through, the ups, the downs, the ins and outs, I think that they would definitely be good people to talk to. So what are you guys' thoughts on, you know, just kind of thinking back on freshman year, thinking about the community, how it's grown, how the connections you've made, like how you've helped foster this community? Anything you want to share about that?
Something that does come up a lot is we just came out of the makerspace. We were there for 3 hours. I don't know. The first time we had engineering last year, we made tables to put around the school, and it made the school have like this kind of like handmade look to it, and that kind of stuck throughout the years. And even in the makerspace, we have this giant like patio thing inside where, you know, we have the laser cutter over there, we have seating, we have everything that you would need to just relax and, you know, think out what you want to do before you actually do it on the tools over there. And I don't know, you want to help, Brodie?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that kind of bouncing off what Marcus said, like with kind of planning out what you want to do, one of the things that we thought would be cool to do in there is just have like a wall in there that is pretty much just made of whiteboards. Like there is pretty much 360 degrees around you of just whiteboards that you can like draw on the ceiling or on the walls and wherever, so that.
And that's just a giant to-do list. We have like, you know, what we want to do next, how to organize stuff, and, you know, maybe something a teacher ordered or like, you know, asked for us to do, and then we just have it filled with stuff we need to do. And then like every day we do like 1 or 2 things, but really it's like our school is evolving as it goes on. It's like, you know, just like we were completely different kids 3 years ago, the school has evolved with us to be the way it is now.
And because of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because of this guy too. Don't leave him out.
Yeah.
Or Miss Hertz, anyone
I
here.
mean, I don't think we would have been able to get up the actual wall itself with that box, because it's a pretty heavy wall. Aqua's,
I'm just so strong.
yeah.
Yeah, he's so strong.
That's really all I'm good for is
He's
my
just,
steroid-induced muscle mass.
Yes. He's just a weight.
Did you want to add anything?
As far as like the community building, I guess, around the school, it's like since we're here since the very beginning, or we like helped build the makerspace. Anyone who like comes in, whether freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, or teachers, we can like people are always want to do something in the makerspace, and it's good to know that like people want to do something and we can help them do something.
Yeah, so it's kind of like we're all, especially the core students, we're all brothers and sisters, really. Like these two guys and the guy sitting right over there, the another student, we're all really like brothers. Like I love these guys with my entire heart, almost more than my family, I would say.
I have a question, because kind of the conversation centering around the makerspace, which is awesome. How those lessons transferred, if they've transferred, into your other classes, right? Does that change how you look at math class or English class or history or science, or are those skills transferable, or is like this is the only cool place in the building?
No, absolutely not. I think one of the things, especially to go off kind of the idea of like how math transfers in there, math transfers in there a ton, because when you're cutting pieces of wood, like it's a flat two-dimensional object, that's essentially like you have to do a ton of geometry. And so I remember, like, I think one of the reasons why I did very well in geometry last year was because that was when we were doing all the makerspace stuff, and I was getting involved with public workshop and Alex and everything. And so all of that kind of just melded together at the same time, and now I can, like, all of those equations make a ton of sense to me. Still can't explain them to anybody, but they make a ton of sense in my head, and I can start to, like, not only build the idea of what I want, but, like, I can see exactly what numbers I need things to be, and I know, like, the value of having something be very precise and to the dot. Like, one of my favorite things I think Alex told me about was when you're cutting something and you need something to be exactly a perfect measurement, you shouldn't use a pencil or a marker or anything. You should use a knife, because a knife gets you such a thin, perfect line that you know exactly where you need to cut. So there is no like extra or anywhere else. And I think using math and a lot of other skills and like designing stuff to be that precise in anything is pretty cool.
And I'd like to add to that, like for all of our classes, we always have a project at the end of the quarter instead of taking a test or something. So usually with those projects, what I've come to realize is what they're trying to do is they're trying to get us to see the idea that they're teaching us as a three-dimensional object, so that whenever we make a poster, or now we can really make anything in the makerspace. we keep coming back to that, but like whenever you're forced to think in 3D about an idea, you're able to see it from every perspective, and then you're going to be able to teach it to someone else. So really, as an inquiry-based school, it's pretty much teaching us how to teach other people what we know.
And then I'll jump in for a question, and Troy, I'd love to hear from you on this one. As part of the the founding class, and being really part of the first crew that kicked the tires on a lot of this stuff, what has been for you kind of the most exciting part of the work, or the interesting part of the work from kind of your own development over the last couple of years?
The most interesting part might be, it sounds really cliche, but just like working with everybody and like being with people, like working, even when I don't get to work with people, like I like the most, I guess, in the school, just working with people and being able to like help, or working with Marcus, or working with Brodie, or working with Ryan, just to like make something that we really like. I think that's like the best part, being able to physically make something that you're proud of.
Awesome.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
He's the guy sitting.
Well, those kind of creeping on
Yeah.
us.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Hi, Brian. You guys are poets in the way you describe this work. Clearly, it's lovely, and it's really lovely to hear about the ways that you're making the school together too. And I hear a lot of pride in that baking that you're making at the same time that you're making things. I don't know if that's an overstatement, but that seemed to be felt a sense of that. So thank you. I was also curious, Alex, you're there in the mix, and what are these sort of connections that are being made between your work and SLA Beeber and the students? How is all that unfolding?
Well, I think first off, it's really important to, I think, honor what Zac said, and I certainly, I've actually been teaching. I taught formally for 5 years, just day in, day out in the classroom, and then I've been teaching for now 16 in formal and informal settings in K through 12 sort of situations. And I certainly wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't learning every day. And sure, there's certainly times where, due to time constraints, when we're doing a project, either here or with the community organization or something, that I might have to have a heavier hand in what's created. But these guys, as an example, I mean, they are literally sort of showing what's possible. And a lot of times we're doing that together, and other times we're not. I'm only here a couple days a week, and I hadn't been here for about a month, and I came back a few weeks ago, and there's stuff, there are improvements, there's tinkerings piling up all over the school. And then it's even kind of crazy to see, like, they've been making trash can covers to hide trash cans to make them look more beautiful. And the design of one of them, the detail, I'm pretty sure came from a fence project that most of these guys worked on in a community in West Philadelphia. And that's not to accuse them of copying at all, actually. That is a huge sort of pat on my back to a certain extent, or I see it as such, and a pat on their back as well, because at least this core team has really been coming out and participating in projects and communities, mostly in West Philadelphia. But it's amazing to see the type of experience that they have here and the type of experience that they have in the community, and then how those two influence one another. And they don't take away from each other. They're entirely different experiences, and they will tell you. I mean, one of the really powerful moments last spring, I was a little worried in helping these guys create this makerspace that all of a sudden we were going to lose these guys from coming and getting involved in our projects and our makerspace, because now they had the tools. Now they had, skills, and they had a space to do stuff. And exactly the opposite happened. We ended up getting many more building heroes, as we call them, coming and getting involved in our work. And I talked to Troy about this. I was like, why is that? And he's like, well, they're two different spaces. We use Beeber for one thing, and we see, this other work and this other makerspace is serving an entirely different need. And it was really awesome to then come back and see how the work that these guys get to do with us and the time we get to spend with them outside of school, how that can then come back and infect a place like this where I'm no longer involved. And in a very grassroots way, they're building up skills and experiences that even in the best of academic circumstances, and the SLAs are the best, that you can't replicate. And they're bringing those skills back, and they're infecting a school and its maker culture and what's made. And one of my other favorite moments recently was Marcus. We were just chatting, and he was telling me about how he's having a good time, but he started having to say no to teachers. I was like, why are you saying? What do you mean you have to say no to teachers? He's like, well, they keep on coming to me and asking me to help them build stuff and build improvements to their rooms. And that's really cool. And that's something that being a co-learner in this process. Like, I wasn't really sure some of that was possible. I knew parts of it were possible because I get to see it in other projects that we do all over the country. But literally, we are, prototyping something together, and we just got funding to expand on pieces of that, and they've showed what's possible, and that's what certainly keeps me excited and coming back every day.
I want to hit on something that is embedded in what we've been talking about, because there's a lot of conversation across the country around citizenship, right? Specifically, the sexy one to talk about is digital citizenship. But a lot of what has just been said is, that's what citizenship looks like in practice. One of the pieces that I remember first year at SLA teaching, end of the year, 9th grade class, about to be sophomores, and I said, how have you changed since you started here? And we had students who came to SLA from 70+ middle schools across the country. Every zip code in the city was represented. And one kid who was totally South Philly, which probably only means something to certain people in this conversation, said, there you go. Right there's, unless you know South Philly, you don't know South Philly. Said, well, I listened to completely different music than I did at the beginning of the year. And she said, I listen to jazz and hip-hop and R&B and rock and classical, and I didn't listen to all those things at the beginning of the year, and I wouldn't have if I hadn't met all these people. And we'll go back to what you said, Marcus. You said these people are like my family. And that was a piece that always helped me know we were doing it right. Did you guys start out as family? Have the three of you been going to school since kindergarten together?
No.
And how does a school start that? How does a school build that?
I don't know. So I don't know. I want to say with Troy, especially because he's sitting right next to me, it was like a slow burn. It started where we well, me and Brodie talked since freshman year, a little bit, and then it started getting to a lot when we started going to DMD.
My house.
And then
He lives under my bed. It's kind of weird.
And then Troy, we started the high school, and we barely talked. We talked like maybe once or twice freshman year, and then the year after that, he started talking to one of my friends, and then they kind of stopped talking to both of us, and then we got stuck together. But then we also this is the same time I started going to the DMD, Department of Making and Doing, and at that time, all of us were going there, so we all became super close because we all spent time with each other learning, and then we also spent time with each other teaching. And you should always spend time where you're the student. You should spend time where you're the mentor, and you should spend time when you don't have to worry about learning or teaching, and you're just friends with someone. And that's what that time is with all of us here. We're all just friends. We don't expect for anything from each other. We don't expect to learn or teach to each other. We just do with each other. That sounded kind of weird, but you know what I meant.
I would also like to add on to part of what Marcus said, and also part of what Alex said with how he was talking about him being worried that the makerspace here would take away from kids going to the DMD, which was the makerspace they were talking about. And for me personally, one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of us flock to the DMD and not as much here, but flock to there more was because there we were a lot of the people who were learning. We had a lot of people who knew so many more things than we did, and so many just insane, ridiculous things of how to use tools in weird ways and how to make things work the way you want them to work, and just how to use tools that we didn't even that we either didn't have here or didn't know existed or didn't know what they were for. So, that was why we went there a lot, was because we had people like Mike and Max and Alex and all kinds of people there who know all of these different varied subjects of ways like electronics and woodworking, and there are people there who did jewelry making and programming and all kinds of stuff. So we went there to learn all those things, and then we brought it back here and used that to teach a whole bunch of people how to do a whole ton of cool different things. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I think one other thing just to add on to it, a subtle point which we may have glossed over a little bit, is that Beeber is not in a new building. It's a beautiful building, but it's not a new building.
A very old building.
Yeah.
The place was made in like the 20s or something. Like it's.
I think it was
very old.
1934.
So there are many things about this school that don't match the incredible learning culture of the SLAs. And then there are things like missing shelves and missing handles all over the school. And part of what you're hearing is that the basic needs of the school have been a building point for community. So the making and the solving of those needs, I mean, I love that Pilla and Chris Pilla, who's the engineering teacher, and some of the other students, they created, like, there's some serious lead issues with the water in Philadelphia schools. Well, they created a water filter for one of the water fountains. But recognizing that each one of these fundamental needs in a classroom does present an opportunity to build a culture, to build a community, to build relationships, to build skills that allows for really authentic sort of co-learning and co-creation. It's a huge opportunity in our schools that I think we miss.
I think that was powerfully said, actually, by the group, and I think that this act of working together is an act of learning together, is sort of a powerful piece. And I wanted to, for people, let me just take a moment and say, for people who are watching live, we have about 20 minutes left to this conversation. It'd be great to hear from you and some of your questions or comments that you might be thinking about. So feel free to tweet to Connected Learning, that's our hashtag, or use the Q&A feature on Google. And we did get a comment just now through Twitter that I wanted to pass to you, MaryBeth. So the question is, was it a shock, actually, for your students to shift into an inquiry model? And the person comments that they seem very at home in this space and doing work together. And so how did it feel for you as a teacher, and what kind of process, and what do you see working across the spaces?
It's a great question, because this inquiry is not, I think Zac used the term silver bullet, where it's like, oh, we'll just like give them inquiry and it'll be great. Like, it's a process. And as Zac also said, similar to the Center City campus, we get students from all over the city. They come from a variety of different schools, a variety of different backgrounds. Some of them have never done a project. Some of them have done many different kinds of projects that are similar to the kind of projects we do. Some of them come from schools that focus on worksheet completion, or read this chapter and answer these questions. And so freshman year, there's a lot of work, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, we do a lot of work supporting you. And what does it mean to manage your time? What does it mean when a teacher assigns you a project and they say, okay, it's due in 2 weeks, and then and in freshman year, by now we could say that, and they're like, okay, I got this. But freshman year, it was not like that. And so there's definitely, as teachers, we had to really, and this goes back to some of the conversation before, Diana was talking about, as teachers, we talk a lot, and we talk about practice, and we talk about, oh, I noticed this happening, students are doing this, and then we brainstorm and we work together and we collaborate to figure out how we can best help our students be successful with this inquiry stuff. And so, when the students are younger, as teachers, we have to keep in mind that we have to set up, checkpoints or check-ins or things like that along the way to keep them on track with their projects. But also, one thing that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember freshman year, it was like, just tell me the answer. Like, the teachers, we wouldn't, they're so used to, like, I ask a question, the teacher tells me an answer, right? And so it's for the feedback that I got, and you guys can also speak that too, is that, we don't give easy answers here, in the sense that, if you can Google it, I'm not going to tell you the answer. If you come to me and ask me something that you have, and every kid at our school has a laptop. And so if you come to me with a question that you could look up, I am not going to answer that question. I will say to you, I wonder how you could figure that out, or I wonder, what I would do if I had that question, to kind of push them into the idea that that they should be asking their own questions and answering their own questions. Does anybody want to share anything about? You look like you do. Yeah, go ahead.
So we have this one teacher, physics teacher, Mr. Gray. Yeah. So anytime you can ask him any question, and he'll say like, what's his go-to response?
Sure,
or that's false. Or if you ask him something, he'll be like, I don't know, what is it? Well, he never gives you a direct answer.
Like, what do you think?
Like, what do you think? Yeah.
You can ask him like, wait, so is I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay. You can ask him like if your work on your math problem was correct. He'd stare at it for a couple seconds, and then he'd walk away.
Make you be really
And then you'd just be like, what? Like, am I wrong? And then.
And the reason he does it isn't to be like, I don't know, like a jerk. He's trying to teach us like what do you think? You know, what do you like? What steps did you go through to get that answer? And why do you think it's right, or why do you think it's wrong, or how can you change it if you don't think it's right or something?
It's pretty frustrating.
Which is very frustrating. Yeah. And I have for algebra 2, and he still does that. And some of the newer 10th, 11th graders who are in algebra, they get so irritated with it. They're like, why won't you give me a direct answer? And I'm like, it's not like it's for a reason.
It's for your own good.
It's for your own.
The thing I'll jump in with is that, first of all, I've been working on the Beaver Project since its first moments of thinking about it. These boys probably have seen me in the last few years, but a lot of times don't really realize what I'm up to. But I was on the ground floor of writing the grant and doing all the legwork to help get all the pieces in place so that this school could live and breathe and grow, and I'll do all those kinds of things. So first of all, yeah, so excited to hear you guys talk about your school this way. And then secondarily, I just wanted to point out that what these guys are talking about and kind of that genesis and that growth into a space of, I don't know, how do I figure it out, how do you persevere, how do you organize, all of those pieces and parts and that stuff really takes time. And what I really, I end up speaking to a lot is that when you get this work right, it is like building a road, not turning on a light switch. Like, this is layers of work. This is an investment of time. This is a big project to change the way that you think about your role as a student, who you are, how you do that work, how you start to own who you are as a student and be in charge of that, and that the environment that Beeber has and the work that's being done in San Marcos and the work that's being done to build a school out in Phoenix that's going to open up this next year, a code academy in Phoenix Union. There is a long tail of work and a long view of this work. And these guys, over 3 years, have come to this place. But it really takes time. Like, it is something that you have to go through yourself. There's no way to just one day say like, oh, today you're going to be doing this and this and this, and it's just going to work. It's going to be awesome, and rainbows and unicorns. That's just not how this happens. It is literally hard, meaningful, but hard work to get to the place that these guys are. So
I want to jump in and first of all say I'm going to correct myself, because one of the things I've been trying to not do is talk about the silver bullet, because one, we don't really need to build up gun culture any more than it already is, and two, to talk more about what things are, right? Like, inquiry is not a panacea, right? All of these things are part of a course of treatment for the miseducation that has been established throughout systems across the country, right? Like, there are many things that are necessary for this to be successful. Inquiry is a piece of it. The fact that I'm sure MaryBeth meets with her advisory on a regular basis and sits down with kids and says, how are you doing? Saying kids' names in a positive way. Like, those are all things that are not inquiry, but that allow inquiry to flourish. So let me change my metaphor. Not a panacea, but a course of treatment. And let's all forget that I said anything about bullets.
And if I can add something about what going along with what you said, Diana, about the work that goes into this, I think what's been really awesome is that a lot of the teachers coming into this were not comfortable with inquiry. It's not just about the students. I mean, we're learning with the students, and it's a job that never ends. You know, every day you figure something out means you figure that you realize you didn't know something, and so now you have new questions and you have new things to explore. And what's great about what we do is that, you know, as teachers, we have to make this shift that it's okay to not know. And it's okay to have to work through things with your students and to explore things with your students. And I think, you know, that's the frustrating part for the students because they want the teacher to have all the answers. But then, you know, also as a teacher, it's a learning curve because, you know, we aren't the experts in the room anymore, especially when every single kid has a laptop. You know, it's like, oh, you're wrong. Look, Google says this. You know, like you can't. There's no like expert like that in the room. And I think that that's something that a lot of schools also forget is that, you know, we think about the students, but we don't think about the learning that the teachers have to do. And so, you know, this process is as Diana said, it's so layered. You know, it's not just you know, it's not just about, oh, what are we going to do with the kids, but like, what kind of preparation do we need? What kind of professional development do we need? What kind of freedom to do what we need to do? You know, what kind of freedom do the teachers need in order to be successful in this model?
And I just, before Zach jumps in, look at all those questions. Like those are all the questions that come with this work when you're getting it, when you're doing it well and being thoughtful and intentional. It just comes with an unending fire hose of questions. Like MaryBeth just went through there.
So my question is for you guys. Your parents, when you started freshman year, and you came home with, I would imagine, some work that you were doing that was different than you'd done in the past. What was that like? What was the education of your parents around this way of doing school, and how did they react, and what was how'd you get there with them?
Well, I have a slightly interesting perspective on this, considering my mother is the home and school, like the home and school person, the home and school leader, czar, whatever you would
which is Philly's equivalent of what others in the country might hear about as a PTA.
Yeah. So she runs that whole thing, and so my mom is very heavily involved with the school. She was actually here today and just texted me that she left her Christmas cards on top of the fridge in the school store, so I have to get those before I leave. But my mom, like, coming home with a whole ton of different work, my mom was very excited about it, really, because she knew that, like, specifically for me, this is the type of place where I am able to strive very well. I'm good with working with my hands and thinking about things a little bit better than just, like, this is a thing, read it, answer the questions about it, then you're done. Like, write a 5-paragraph essay about this thing, and then you will get a grade. And I went to a school that was just that. It was do this, prepare for a test, take the test, prepare for the next test. And it was always that. And it started to really, like, drag on me and be, like, I just became very, like, done with all of it. And so, like, Bert, Ryan, who we introduced earlier, I've known him for, like, 8 years. He can confirm all of this because he went to that school with me since the 3rd grade. And so, yeah, we did a whole ton of that. My mom was very excited to see me come home with projects and be very excited about, you know, we did this today, and we have laptops now, and we did all this cool stuff. And, like, once we started with the makerspace, my mom got even more and more excited about, like, seeing me do all these kinds of things, although she was a little bit concerned about how late I was coming home because I tended to say to the very edges of where my trans pass would let me go. We had to get 8 o'clock passes and everything, so I'd come home at like 10 o'clock some nights, and I'd be like, your dad came home before you did. This is starting to get, like, you need to text me. But yeah, my parents are very excited about it, and they're very happy that I'm here, and they're not even, like, they don't even begin to understand some of the stuff that we're doing, especially with the makerspace and things like that, but they're very excited that I'm doing all of it.
Troy, Marcus, same thing?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. When I was in middle school, the transition was really, really weird for me because when I was in middle school, I had, like, straight A's, and we didn't get that many projects, but any projects we did do, it was just, like, no problem, and the work was really easy, and I was like, Mom, like, this is some easy stuff. I don't know how it's going to be when I get into high school. And when I got into high school and I got my first project it was an eye opener. I was like, oh man, like,
that's a word for it.
Yeah. Middle school, like, I don't want to say it babied us or babied me, but it was just like it baby it like I think because of the people that were like around us, the teachers didn't push me as hard or push us as hard as they could have. And when I came here, like my mom was like, I don't know, I was when I came here, I got to see what real work was like. And as far as like my parents, my mom she was really happy to see that I wasn't just like I was being pushed. She was happy to see I was being pushed, and I wasn't just like coasting along. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Marcus, would you like to add your piece?
Marcus, did you want to add anything?
I don't know.
It's okay. No pressure.
No, it's okay.
Do you want to say ditto?
Yeah, same.
Awesome.
We're all the same person.
Yeah, remember.
Right. You started explaining that. That's right. So it's really lovely. I thought this was a lovely question because I do think that, sometimes we think about these schools as these closed places, but actually they're really like part of a much larger world that you live in that has parents and has community members and spaces like DMD and the Makerspace and it's wonderful to see the sort of connections between those spaces. And one of the things I wanted to go back to the book about was that there's also this idea that was described in the book about engaging an entrepreneurial spirit, which I think is described as not necessarily like you're all ready to set up your own business, but that you have this sort of spirit of creativity and entrepreneurial looking forward. So anyway, that's one idea I'd love to sort of hear about, sort of your thinking forward, where you imagine this leads, and then maybe we'll start to wrap the conversation.
You start. Okay. I think for me it made me think of how do I say this? I have like this way of looking at things now where anything I do is important, right? And anything I think about it has to be important, or it's just a waste of my time. Like Alex here, like the way I see him take care of business and in public workshop, and like Miss Hertz, the way I see her teach, like there's just a lot of stuff that I can appreciate things a lot more than I did when I was in 9th grade and 8th grade. And now I can see all the work that everyone puts into anything. Like I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting anywhere with this, but like I think over time the way the inquiry-based learning is, and the way since we've all been in the makerspace and we've been forced to make stuff and think deeply about it. It made me think deeply about everything. Like even the thoughts in my own head. Like I think deep. Before I even think.
Think deeper.
I dig deeper.
Deeper.
Go deeper. So yeah, it really makes me like see, like I don't know, maybe someone's walking down the street and I'm like, I understand that that's a person. It's not just that thing that's walking down the street. And they've done tons of work and they've done everything that they've done, and it's probably more than I have done. And I can appreciate everything and everyone on a deeper level because I've been able to look at stuff in 3 dimensions instead of, writing an essay and then taking a test and then waiting for the next one. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's lovely, actually. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think how Alex was seeing things deeper than just like things that are more than just skin deep. So like one of the things was like if you drive by a restaurant, like say you drive by like a Wendy's or McDonald's or something, what the inside of like the one that's near you looks like, but you don't have the perspective of being inside that particular one. So like when I look around the walls of my house, like recently I was building shelves for my mom, and I knew exactly how far apart I needed to drill the holes in the wall to hit the studs, because I knew behind the drywall there are studs that every 16 inches apart there's another one, and so I need to drill holes 16 inches apart to get the like the brackets into the wall so that they're not just going to rip right out of the drywall. I never would have even thought of doing that. I'm like, hey, just drill them into the wall and they'll be fine, right? That's how it works. It's all just one solid sheet. I was not aware that there were studs behind the walls, and there's this entire skeleton behind my house that, like, and literally in everywhere that I'm at, it's like, this is, now I'm just sitting, I can see through my walls with X-ray vision, essentially.
Nothing, Troy?
Do you want to add anything, Troy?
One thing I just want to add is that I think a lot of what we're talking about, one of the things that makes the SLA is so great, one of the reasons which, I largely moved back to Philadelphia to do my work here because the SLAs existed, is that the SLAs, the people behind them, the teachers, the students understand that most of these issues around making a great learning environment, it's ultimately a people problem. And it really relies on people who are willing to take risks and people who are willing to lead, who are willing to be wrong. And I can't think of any better sort of collection or examples of people who exemplify that than, well, really with Ryan over on the side, the 5 people who were sitting kind of in front of me. And I'm Chris Pilla, the engineering teacher, is not with us today, but I am constantly amazed by, his sort of courage to do something that is out of his wheelhouse to a certain extent, and adopt something and make it his own, and then have other people just latch onto that and run with that after that. So on one hand, I can give you the example that Chris has truly embodied the entrepreneurial spirit in the past couple of weeks and is now churning out Christmas ornaments and all sorts of Christmas decorations to raise money for the makerspace, and that's his own little side pet project, and that's okay. You guys may be running the laser cutter at points, but that's kind of his own little pet project, and I think that's so fantastic. On the other hand, one of these guys' fellow team members who is not here at this point, or not with us today, I think it was this summer or last spring, I realized at a certain point in the day in our makerspace that he was actually making a potato gun.
Yes.
Wonder who that
could have been.
And then I looked around and I saw that some of the other team members who were even sitting here were making sort of Dungeons and Dragons-esque devices and weapons, and at first glance they seemed, like, I think the typical teacher or adult reaction would be like, oh, hell no, guns, weapons, stuff like that. But actually, we understand, I think these guys could not have delivered it more clearly. We started off learning about the world by building things. We all did. We started off by learning about things by building them and knocking them down. And they are exploring their own passions and interests, and I think one of the reasons they do what they do, and they're willing to work so hard, and we have to kick them out of the school or our makerspace at obscene hours when their parents otherwise might think they're using drugs, is that they are exploring their passions, and they're getting that mix of seriousness and then just their own seriousness with, this is a passion of mine. And the potato gun, I think, actually led to almost a series of class projects.
Yeah, there's now a turret in the makerspace that's actually on top of the little pavilion that's in there. There's 2 of them up there. They're pretty sick. But we're also making lightsabers as well.
Oh yeah.
And there's a bunch of dents in the walls.
Yeah, we did accidentally shoot it at a wall.
But
awesome.
To be clear, that was also starting to influence Chris Pilla's curriculum in a positive way. Like, I could do this with the maker projects. This is what the students are interested in, and it's really clearly worked. So that takes, here just with Chris, you see someone who's putting his foot forward, but also willing to step back and look and really listen and let people run. And that is an amazing thing about SLA that makes our job super, super easy. and makes them such a great partner to work with.
That's great. Thanks for making that connection. And we are at the end, and I just wanted to refer back again to this book as a resource for thinking about some of these things in your own context for those who are listening. And in chapter, it's 48, the proposition of 48 is to instill a love of learning. And so in there's a question that maybe I thought we could just quickly just answer all of us, so we have one last word, and then we'll close for the evening. So the question is, what are you all learning that resonates with you right now? And my quick answer would be the three-dimensional aspect of learning is what's resonating with me right now. Someone else want to go?
I'll jump in quick. Something that not necessarily related to the work that we talked about specifically, but inquiry in general, is I'm constantly, this will be no surprise to anybody who watches my Twitter presence, but I'm pretty fascinated by data visualization, and so I'm constantly falling down kind of the rabbit hole of learning new and more interesting ways to think about that and how it can impact the work for inquiry.
This is popcorn style, so I'm not going to call anybody.
Okay. I guess, well, considering with the projects that we're working on our own, me and Marcus are, as I said, making lightsabers, so replica lightsabers out of PVC parts, and I've been learning just a lot of things around that of how to make something that looks accurate to not only the way it looks in something else, but the way that you want it, and using materials that you have at hand to make something look really, really nice.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's this thing where me and Brodie actually went out of our way on our own we want to make sure that we make something every month that we're either learning from or we're really satisfied with in the end by using the old skills that we had and perfecting them. So this month, the first month, obviously since it's December and in 2 days it comes out, we had to make some lightsabers. There's no way we could have not done that. So right now we're, I think maybe tomorrow we have to go pick up some batteries from not batteries, buttons and switches.
That's where you want to go.
Yeah, from Radio Shack, so we can finish our lightsabers soon. Because I want to finish them before the break comes.
Oh, did I cut you off? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Something that I learned, I guess, that I can. So I had this idea of taking old skateboard decks and making wallets out of them, and I learned how to use the bandsaw with that. In doing that, and I really hated the bandsaw. I still don't like the bandsaw, but I learned how to use the bandsaw, and I think just that project. I only made a couple, but just doing that made it a lot easier for me to I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Get over your bandsaw fear.
Get over my bandsaw fear.
Crippling fear of bandsaws attacking you in the night.
You're gonna make a lot more of it.
Did you want to go, Al?
No.
Okay. I was just going to add that I'm reading Dana Boyd's It's Complicated, the Network Live of Teens. I think that's the subtitle. And so I teach a class basically for freshmen on social media, and so we have really, really, really interesting conversations about their use of social media and just basically the connections I'm making is we really underestimate teenagers. Teenagers are like pariahs. It's people want to blame things on these darn kids, and and you see groups of kids on the corner and it's oh, those hoodlums, that kind of stuff. And I think that what I love about working here is that we give that the more responsibility you give kids, the more they're going to live up to those expectations, and and too often in schools we take that responsibility away, and kids live up to that expectation. And so I think what's been awesome for me this year, actually these guys are both in my elective, and just oh, can I go to Makerspace? Yeah, and I won't even go in the Makerspace for an hour, and I'm okay, well, they're in there and they know what they're doing, and there's kids in there, they're helping them, and it's just this idea of if we set the expectation that we trust you and we think you're going to do awesome things, that's what you're going to do. And so that's kind of my takeaway from like reading Dana Boyd's book and just the conversation today.
So I've picked up a trumpet, which is completely off the rails compared to everybody else's really good answers. But I was really tired of being a person who said, no, I don't play an instrument. And so I picked up a trumpet. My grandfather played the trumpet, or has played the trumpet for 6 decades. And I love the work of John Holt, and he has a great book called Never Too Late, where he talks about learning to play the cello later in life. And I realize I'm not later in life. I'm later than I used to be, I guess. And so, yeah, I just picked up a trumpet because I thought I'd like to learn how to do this. Unfortunately, I also live in an apartment building, so that puts some restrictions on the when you can practice times.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, so much. And thank you to all those ancestors who've led the way to this, and to all of you who are leading the future of this. And for being here today and taking the time to be on this Educator Innovator webinar. As we mentioned, this broadcast will be archived at educatorinnovator.org, as well as Connected Learning TV, and many of the resources mentioned will be posted there. So we encourage you to go there and to sign up for future opportunities to engage in these conversations with us and for other resources. Sign up at educatorinnovator.org, and you can also follow at innovates_ed. So thank you again for everybody for joining us and making and taking the time and sharing your passion and your inquiries with us today. Good night.